She stood at the edge of the long gravel driveway, a suitcase in one hand, a folded piece of paper in the other. The paper was worn and yellowing, its corners curled, but the address printed on it was still legible. Olivia Bennett had stared at it for hours during her long bus ride from Michigan to North Carolina, each mile both speeding her toward a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face and giving her time to imagine every possible outcome. She was 23 years old and had spent her entire life wondering about where she came from. Her adoptive parents, Rob and Karen Bennett, had been wonderful, kind, devoted, and honest. They told her the truth from the start, that she was adopted as a newborn, that her birth mother had made a difficult choice, and that no matter where she came from, she was deeply loved. Still, a part of her had always ached for more. Who were they? What were they like? Did they ever think about her? She kept those questions buried for years until her recent birthday, when Karen gave her a small box that Rob had never seen. Inside it was a birth certificate with her original last name, Holloway, and a handwritten note signed simply, "I hope you find me when you're ready. Love always, Mom." Olivia's heart hadn't stopped pounding since she read those words. Now, standing in front of a modest, single-story home surrounded by tall oak trees and a humming stillness, she realized that "ready" didn't feel anything like she'd imagined. Her legs were heavy, her hand numb from gripping the suitcase too tightly, and her mind buzzing with what-ifs. She took a deep breath, walked up the steps, and knocked 3 times. A few moments passed before the door opened. A woman in her early 40s, with short, sandy blonde hair and soft green eyes, looked out. She was wearing a navy blue t-shirt and jeans, and she looked like someone who had just come in from the garden. Earth on her hands, a sun hat tossed on a nearby chair. "Yes?" she asked, her voice cautious. Olivia's mouth went dry. She stared at the woman's face, searching for something familiar. A shape of the jaw, the color of her eyes, anything. She opened her mouth, but the words tangled. "My name is Olivia Bennett," she finally said. "I think you might be my birth mother." The woman blinked. Her face changed in an instant, from curious to shocked to something deep and unreadable. She stepped back slightly, leaning on the doorframe. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Olivia?" Her voice cracked as she said the name, like it hadn't passed her lips in years but had never left her heart. She stepped forward and touched Olivia's arm gently, as though afraid she might disappear. "It's you. I found your note," Olivia said, her voice shaking. "In my adoption file. I wasn't sure if I'd ever. I didn't know if." Before she could finish, the woman pulled her into a hug. It was tight, trembling, and full of 23 years of silence. "My name is Jenna Holloway," she said when they finally pulled apart. "I'm your mother." Inside, the house smelled like coffee and cinnamon. It was cozy and cluttered in a way that felt lived in. Books stacked in corners, a pair of knitting needles left on the couch, half-written grocery lists stuck to the fridge. Jenna made tea, though neither of them touched it. They sat at the kitchen table, and the stories began to unfold. "I was 19 when I had you," Jenna said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was in college, scared, and your father, his name was Michael, he wasn't ready. He took off when I told him I was pregnant. My parents were furious. They told me if I kept the baby, I was on my own." She paused, her eyes distant. "I wanted to keep you. God, I did. But I had nothing. No money, no job, no support. I made the hardest decision of my life. I chose a closed adoption because I thought it would be easier. But it never was." She showed Olivia an old photo album she kept hidden in her bedroom closet. Inside were pictures from her pregnancy, hospital photos of a tiny newborn, and a collection of birthday cards she had never sent. "I wrote you every year," Jenna said, handing her a stack of cards. "I hoped one day you'd read them." Olivia turned them over slowly. Every card was addressed simply, "To my daughter. I always wondered, Olivia said softly, her voice cracking. Why I was given up. But now I understand. It wasn't because you didn't love me. Jenna reached across the table and squeezed her hand. It was because I loved you. And I wanted more for you than I could give. They talked for hours, laughing, crying, pausing for long stretches as emotions washed over them in waves. Later that evening, Jenna hesitated before asking, "Do you want to meet Michael? Your father?" Olivia froze. She hadn't expected that question so soon. I don't know, she admitted. Is he still around? He's in Atlanta. We haven't spoken in years, but I know where he works. I can reach out, if you want. It took Olivia 3 days to decide. And when she did, Jenna made the call. Michael answered after 2 rings. She explained everything, about Olivia, about her visit. There was silence on the other end. Then a soft, stunned voice. She's alive. She found you. Jenna passed the phone to Olivia. Hello, she said, her heart racing. Olivia, Michael's voice was low, gravelly. I don't even know what to say. I've thought about this moment for so long. They agreed to meet a week later in a coffee shop just outside Atlanta. Michael was tall, with silver at his temples and the same deep brown eyes Olivia saw in the mirror every morning. He was nervous, fidgeting with his hands until she walked in. Then he stood up and pulled her into a cautious, tearful embrace. I was a coward, he said honestly. I left when I should have stayed. I've regretted it every single day. They spent the afternoon talking. Michael told her about the life he had built, the things he had lost, and the hope he had always held that one day, he'd get a second chance. Over the next few months, Olivia's world began to change. She split her time between Michigan, where she still had her job and friends, and North Carolina, where she grew closer to Jenna. She visited Michael in Georgia a few times, getting to know him slowly but surely. She told Rob and Karen everything. They cried. Karen, especially, was proud of her for searching, for being brave enough to seek out the truth. I'm still your daughter, Olivia told them one night during a phone call. But now I just know more of my story. 1 year after that first knock on Jenna's door, Olivia stood on a small stage at a local college, invited to share her journey during an adoption awareness event. My name is Olivia Bennett, she said into the mic. I found my birth parents at 23 years old. I wasn't looking for new parents. I already had a great family. But I was looking for myself. And what I found was a story that didn't end with abandonment. It began with love. It's complicated. It's emotional. But it's real. And it helped me understand that we don't have to choose between our past and our present. Sometimes, we're lucky enough to have both. As she stepped off the stage, Jenna and Michael were waiting in the front row, smiling through tears. Rob and Karen were watching via live stream from Michigan. And Olivia? For the first time in her life, she felt like she had her entire heart back, every part of it. Found, mended, and whole.